A High Sheriff is a ceremonial officer for each shrieval county of England and Wales and Northern Ireland, of the Chief Sheriff of a number of paid sheriffs in U.S. states who outranks and commands the others in their court-related functions. The office existed in what is now the Republic of Ireland but was abolished there in 1926. In England and Wales, the term High Sheriff arose to distinguish sheriffs of counties proper from sheriffs of cities and boroughs, designated counties of themselves but not counties properly speaking. These cities and boroughs no longer have sheriffs except for the City of London, so now all English and Welsh sheriffs except the sheriffs of the City of London are High Sheriffs. The office is now an unpaid privilege with ceremonial duties, the sheriffs being appointed annually by the Crown through a warrant from the Privy Council, except in Cornwall, where the High Sheriff is appointed by the Duke of Cornwall. In England and Wales, the office's civil enforcement powers exist but are not exercised by convention. The office was termed that of sheriff until the 1st of April 1974, except in the City of London, which has two sheriffs of the City of London, England, Wales and Northern Ireland. In England, Wales and Northern Ireland, the High Sheriff is, theoretically, the sovereign's judicial representative in the county, while the Lord Lieutenant is the sovereign's personal and military representative. The jurisdictions, the shrieval counties, are no longer coterminous with administrative areas, representing a mix between the ancient counties and more recent local authority areas. The post contrasts with that of sheriff in Scotland, who is a judge sitting in a sheriff court. The word sheriff is a contraction of the term shire. The term, from the Old English shirgerefa, designated a royal official responsible for keeping the peace throughout a shire, a county, on behalf of the king. The term was preserved in England notwithstanding the Norman conquest. The office of sheriff had its origins in the 10th century. The office reached the height of its power under the Norman kings. While the sheriffs originally had been men of great standing at court, the 13th century saw a process whereby the office devolved on significant men within each county, usually landowners. The provisions of Oxford established a yearly tenure of office. The appointments and duties of the sheriffs in England and Wales were redefined by the Sheriffs Act 1887. Under the provisions of the Local Government Act 1972, on the 1st of April 1974, the office previously known as Sheriff was retitled High Sheriff. The serving High Sheriff submits a list of names of possible future High Sheriffs to a tribunal which chooses 3 names to put to the sovereign. The nomination is made on the 12th of November every year, and the term of office runs from the 25th of March, the first day of the year, until 1751. No person may be appointed twice in 3 years, unless there is no other suitable person in the county. Nomination. The Sheriffs Act 1887, as amended, provides that sheriffs should be nominated on the 12th of November, or the Monday following if it falls on a Sunday, by any 2 or more of the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the Lord President of the Council, and the Lord Chief Justice of England, other members of Her Majesty's Most Honourable Privy Council, and any 2 or more judges of Her Majesty's High Court. These amendments were in 1998. The Chancellor of the Exchequer was granted full entitlement, not merely conditional entitlement, if there is no Lord High Treasurer, since the treasurership is by constitutional convention always placed into commission, and in 2006 the Lord Chancellor was removed as a nominating officer through the operation of the Constitutional Reform Act 2005. These offices nominate 3 candidates for each county in England and Wales, which are enrolled on a parchment by the Queen's Remembrancer. Eligibility for nomination and appointment as High Sheriff under the Sheriffs Act 1887 excludes peers of Parliament, members of the House of Commons, commissioners or officers of Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, officers of the Post Office and officers of the Navy, Army or Royal Air Force on full pay, clergymen and barristers as solicitors in actual practice. Pricking. The practice of pricking is an ancient custom used to appoint the High Sheriffs of England and Wales. In February and March of each year, 2 parchments prepared the previous November are presented to the sovereign at a meeting of the Privy Council. A further parchment is drawn up in November for Cornwall and presented to the Duke of Cornwall. Certain eligible persons nominate candidates for each county shrievalty, one of whom is chosen for each by the sovereign. In practice, the first name on the list is nowadays always the one chosen. The second and third names tend to become sheriffs in succeeding years, barring incapacity or death. The sovereign signifies assent by pricking the document with a silver bodkin by the relevant name for each county, and signs the parchment when complete. The parchment for the Duchy of Lancaster is known as the lights, and the ceremony of selection known as pricking the lights. The term lights, meaning list, was once reserved for Yorkshire. The date at which the name was transferred to Lancashire is unknown. The lights is used from the 3 ceremonial counties that fall wholly or partially within the boundaries of the historic County Palatine of Lancaster, Lancashire, Greater Manchester, and Merseyside. The practice is believed to date back to a year in the reign of Elizabeth I, when, lacking a pen, she decided to use her bodkin to mark the name instead. By contrast, Lord Campbell stated, perhaps without intention of publication, in February 1847, in ancient times, Sir, when sovereigns did not know how to write the names, while acquiring a prick and a signature from Queen Victoria as Prince Albert asked him when the custom began. Ireland. The Sheriffs Act 1920 restricted the duties of the High Sheriff to summoning of the county grand jury and attending the judge at assizes. In the Irish Free State, the Courts of Justice Act 1924 abolished the grand jury and the assizes, and the office of High Sheriff was formally abolished by the Court Offices Act 1926. The office continues to exist in Northern Ireland. Declaration. The declaration a person must make before taking the office of High Sheriff is contained in the second schedule of the Sheriffs Act 1887. Additional words are inserted in the case of the Duchy of Cornwall. For example, the declaration includes, "I solemnly declare that I will well and truly serve the Queen's Majesty and also His Royal Highness Duke of Cornwall." Responsibilities. Contemporary High Sheriffs have few genuine responsibilities, and the functions are largely representational. Attendance at royal visits to the county. Proclamation of the accession of a new sovereign, acting as the returning officer for parliamentary elections in county constituencies. This role is normally delegated to an acting returning officer. Attendance at the opening ceremony when a High Court judge goes on circuit. Historically, execution of High Court writs. Annual appointment of under-sheriffs to act as deputies. Theoretical responsibilities include the well-being and protection of High Court judges, and attending them in court, and the maintenance of the loyalty of subjects to the Crown. However, most of the High Sheriff's work is delegated so that in effect the post of High Sheriff is essentially ceremonial. The High Sheriff was traditionally responsible for the maintenance of law and order within the county, although most of these duties are now delegated to the professional Chief Constable of Police. As a result of its close links with law and order, the position is frequently awarded to people with an association with law enforcement. The High Sheriff was originally allowed to kill suspects resisting arrest. This was still legal in the 17th century. Edward Coke noted that when the High Sheriff employed constables to assist in his duties, the law was also extended to them. Powers. Under the provisions of the Sheriffs Act 1887, if a sheriff finds any resistance in the execution of a writ, he shall take with him the power of the county, and shall go in proper person to do execution, and may arrest the resistors and commit them to prison, and every such resistor shall be guilty of a misdemeanor. Exceptional counties. City of London. There are 2 sheriffs of the City of London, elected annually by the City of London liverymen. The function is similar but not equivalent to that of High Sheriff, since the City of London forms its own ceremonial county, thus not under the jurisdiction of High Sheriff of Greater London. The Sheriffs of London also served as sheriffs for Middlesex until 1889, when the office of High Sheriff of Middlesex was created. Cornwall. The Duchy of Cornwall's first charter in 1337 states that the shrievalty of Cornwall, the right to appoint the sheriff for the county, is vested in the Duke of Cornwall. 2 further charters, dated the 18th of March 1337 and the 3rd of January 1338, state that no sheriff of the king shall enter Cornwall to execute the king's writ. The High Sheriff of Cornwall swears to serve both the reigning monarch and Duke of Cornwall. When there is no Duke of Cornwall, the Duchy Council still sits, but under the trusteeship of the English monarch. Only as Duchy trustee can the monarch appoint the Sheriff of Cornwall. Nomination and appointment generally takes place during Hilary, and announced via the Duchy of Cornwall office. Durham. The High Sheriff of Durham was appointed by the Prince Bishop of Durham until 1836, when the jurisdiction of the County Palatine became vested in the Crown. Since then the High Sheriffs of Durham have been appointed similar to other High Sheriffs in England and Wales. Lancashire. The right to nominate and select High Sheriffs in Lancashire is vested in the monarch in right of the Duchy of Lancaster. Before 1974, this right applied only to the High Sheriff of Lancashire, but since the boundary changes of the Local Government Act 1972, the High Sheriff of Greater Manchester and High Sheriff of Merseyside also come under the jurisdiction of the Duchy of Lancaster. As with other counties in England, 3 names are nominated to the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster for Lancashire appointments. The Chancellor presents these to the monarch, with his recommendation in a private audience. New appointments are usually announced during Hilary. Wales. The nomination of sheriffs in the counties of Wales was first vested by statute in the Council of Wales and the Marches and the Welsh justices under Henry VIII. With the abolition of the council in 1689, the power of nomination was transferred to the justices of the Court of Great Sessions in Wales. When this court was abolished in 1830, its rights were in turn transferred to the courts of King's Bench, Exchequer and Commons Pleas. Finally, by an Act of Parliament of 1845, the nomination and appointment of sheriffs in Wales was made identical to that in England. United States. The position of High Sheriff in the United States generally denotes the superior sheriff in a state, or the head of a statewide sheriff's department. Such a position exists in Rhode Island and Hawaii. In New Hampshire, the 10 high sheriffs are the senior law enforcement officers of each county, and have police powers throughout the state. The New York City Sheriff functions as a high sheriff over the 5 counties boroughs, each of which contains a subordinate under sheriff in charge.